My son-in-law held the envelope up like it was something he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. A check? He laughed and looked around the Thanksgiving table at his parents, his college friends, my daughter, from First Savings Bank. More laughter. Mom, this is sweet, but we're not exactly hurting. My daughter didn't say a word. She just smiled at him the way she always smiled at him, like his approval was oxygen. Then he set the envelope on the edge of the table, picked up his wine glass, and went back to talking about the second location he was planning to open in the spring. The envelope slid off the table. Nobody picked it up. I drove home that night in my 2009 Civic, with the heat that only worked on one side, and thought about the 34 years I'd spent building something invisible. The next morning, I called my attorney. She picked up on the second ring. Dorothy. Her voice shifted immediately, the way it always did when I called. What do you need? Pull the lease file on Meridian Commons, I said. Unit 4B through 4F. A pause. I heard her pull up the file. Then, very quietly, she said, Dorothy, are you sure about this? I'm sure, I said. And get me the full portfolio valuation. All of it. I think it's time. Quick question, before we go further. Have you ever watched someone dismiss you, and in that moment, you knew something they didn't? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe. There's more where this is coming from. Now, let me tell you what was really inside that envelope. The Thanksgiving table had seated 14 people. My daughter and her husband had just bought a house in Westfield, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, a kitchen island the size of my entire living room. My son-in-law had opened his restaurant, Forager, 2 years ago, farm to table. Wood-fired everything. The kind of place where the menu changes weekly and the bread costs $11. His parents flew in from Connecticut. His college friends brought wine that came in bottles without labels. My daughter wore a silk blouse I recognized from a magazine spread. I wore my good cardigan, the navy one with the buttons that had started to pill at the elbows. I'd worked the early shift at Hargrove's Market that morning. Cashier, lane 6, same lane I'd worked for 11 years. I clocked out at noon, drove home, changed, and arrived at my daughter's house holding a sweet potato casserole and that envelope. The casserole she set on the counter without comment. The envelope she handed directly to her husband because that's what their marriage had become. She filtered everything through his reaction first before deciding how she felt about it. He opened it at the table, during dessert, while everyone was watching. The check was for $40,000. Not a fortune by any measure, but $40,000 from a woman they believed lived paycheck to paycheck in a 1-bedroom apartment and scanned groceries for a living. It should have meant something. It should have prompted a question. At minimum. Instead, he held it up and made his joke. His mother touched her pearls. My daughter smiled. The envelope hit the floor. I didn't say anything. I picked up my purse, said my goodbyes the way you do when you've decided something, and walked to my car in the November dark. That check represented 3 months of rental income from 1 unit in a building I'd owned for 19 years. There were 11 units total in that building. My son-in-law's restaurant occupied 4 of them under a commercial lease negotiated through my LLC Clearwater Property Group and managed by my attorney, Patricia Voss. He had no idea who his landlord was. He'd never asked. The lease was managed through a property management company, and as far as he knew, the building belonged to some faceless investment group out of Chicago. He'd been parking in my parking lot and cooking in my kitchen for 2 years without knowing. I got home, made a cup of chamomile tea, and sat at my kitchen table with the portfolio binder Patricia updated for me every quarter. 43 properties. A mix of commercial and residential spread across 4 counties in western Massachusetts. I'd started with a duplex in 1991 that I bought for $62,000 with money I'd saved over 8 years working double shifts. I fixed the plumbing myself using a library book and a YouTube video before YouTube had good plumbing videos. Rented both units. Used that income to buy the next one. I never told my daughter because I wanted her to love me without the money being part of it. I wanted her to see that a woman who counted change at a register could still have dignity, still have worth, still deserve respect. I thought if she didn't know about the money, she'd have to find other reasons to value me. That was my mistake. You can't teach someone your value by hiding it. You just teach them you don't have any. The current portfolio valuation on the last page of the binder read $14.2 million. I turned to the section marked Meridian Commons. That was the strip mall on Route 9 inches, Hadley. 6 commercial units, built in 1987, which I'd purchased in 2004 when the previous owner died and his heirs wanted a quick sale. I'd paid $900,000. It was worth 4 times that now. Unit 4B through 4F, the 5 connected units that my son-in-law had knocked through to create the open floor plan of Forager, was currently generating $18,400 per month in lease payments, deposited automatically into Clearwater's operating account every first of the month. My daughter's husband had made a joke at Thanksgiving about my check while sitting in my building. I called Patricia back the next morning. "The lease on Meridian 4B through 4F, I said. "When does it come up for renewal?" "February 28th, she said. "He's already submitted a renewal request, wants to expand into 4A as well. That would give him the whole East Wing. Tell the management company to pause that request. No renewal confirmation until I say so." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Does this have something to do with the call you made yesterday?" "It has everything to do with it." "All right," she said. "And the portfolio valuation, you said you wanted the full picture. Should I schedule a meeting with your financial advisor?" "Schedule a meeting with me first," I said. "Just you and me. There are some things I need to figure out before I decide what to do." The meeting happened 3 days later, at Patricia's office downtown. She had everything laid out, full property list, current market valuations, projected income through the next fiscal year. She also had something extra on the table when I sat down. "I did some routine due diligence on the Meridian tenant," she said carefully, "the restaurant. And," she slid a folder across the desk, "Forager has a silent investor, a man named Robert Gaines. He put in $200,000 when the restaurant opened. He has a 30% stake." She paused. "Your son-in-law has been filing quarterly reports showing the restaurant operating at a loss for 8 consecutive quarters." I opened the folder. Numbers. Bank statements. The investor agreement. "But the restaurant is always full," I said. I'd driven by. I'd seen the parking lot on a Saturday night. I knew what a busy restaurant looked like. "It is," Patricia said. "I had a contact in the area do some informal reconnaissance. The restaurant is doing extremely well by all appearances. But according to the report sent to the investor, it's bleeding money." I looked at the bank statements she'd pulled from public filings. "He's siphoning income." "That's my read, yes. Robert Gaines has been patient, but I'm told he's recently hired an attorney to review the financials." Patricia looked at me steadily. "Dorothy, if this is what it looks like, your son-in-law has a significant legal exposure." I sat with that for a long moment. Outside Patricia's window, the December street was bare-treed and gray. A woman walked past with a stroller, collar up against the cold. "My daughter," I said. "Is her name on any of it?" Patricia shook her head. "The investor agreement is in his name only. The LLC he used to open the restaurant is solely his. Your daughter has no documented ownership stake and no access to the business accounts." I exhaled. "Good. I need that documented clearly. I can have a memo drafted." "Do that." I closed the folder. "And I want you to find out if Robert Gaines has formally engaged legal counsel yet. If he's already moving, I may be able to help him move faster." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "You want to reach out to the investor your son-in-law has been defrauding?" "I want to make sure the right information reaches the right people," I said. "I'll let you know how to proceed." I drove home slowly. My daughter had called twice since Thanksgiving. Both times I'd let the calls go to voicemail. The first message was breezy, just checking in. "Hope you're not upset about the dinner. Marcus didn't mean anything by it." The second was quieter. She said she missed me. She said she was sorry the casserole didn't get more attention. Small apologies for small things. Not yet touching the real thing. I wasn't ready to talk to her. Not until I understood what she knew and what she didn't. I spent the evening going through old text conversations on my phone. Messages from my daughter over the past 2 years. References to the restaurant. Mentions of finances. Nothing that suggested she knew about Robert Gaines or the investor agreement. What I found instead was something sadder, dozens of messages in which she relayed her husband's opinions as if they were her own. "He thinks we should do this, Marcus says that's probably not a good idea. We've decided. We've decided. We've decided. Somewhere in 2 years of marriage, she'd stopped saying I. I called my daughter back on a Tuesday evening. She answered on the first ring. Mom, I'm so glad you called. Are you? I said. Silence. Then, are you upset? About Thanksgiving? I'm not upset, I said. That was true. Upset was too small a word for what I felt, and anger wasn't quite right either. What I felt was clarity. I'm calling because I want to have dinner with you, just the two of us. Saturday. She hesitated the way she always hesitated when plans didn't include her husband. Marcus and I usually, just you, I said gently, bring comfortable shoes. We're going somewhere first. Saturday morning I picked her up at 9. She got in the car in her good coat, her hair done, which told me she'd expected a restaurant. I drove her 20 minutes north to a building on Route 9. Why are we at a strip mall? She asked. I parked and got out. She followed, looking around at the storefronts, a dental office, a dry cleaner, a nail salon at the far end. And there, taking up the entire east wing, with its brushed steel signage and the wood-stacked display in the window, Forager, Mom. This is Marcus's restaurant. I know, I said. I own the building. She stopped walking. I let her process it for a moment. The parking lot was empty at this hour. A thin crust of December frost still sat in the shadows. What do you mean you own? I purchased this property in 2004, I said. Your husband leases 4 commercial units from my LLC. He has been for 2 years. I paused. He's been parking in my parking lot, cooking in my kitchen, and serving customers on my floor every single day. My daughter stared at the restaurant like she didn't recognize it anymore. You never told me. No. Why? Because I wanted to know who you were before you knew who I was. I said it without anger, just fact. I wanted to see if you'd see my value without the buildings attached to it. She was quiet for a long time. Her breath made small clouds in the cold air. How many buildings? 43 properties. The portfolio's worth $14 million, give or take. Her legs went unsteady. She put a hand on my car. 14. The check I gave you at Thanksgiving was from the rental income on 1 unit. It was the smallest check I've written this quarter. She sat down on the hood of my car. I wasn't sure she meant to, she just sort of folded. Her voice when it came out was barely audible. Mom, you've been scanning groceries. I scan groceries because I like the work. I like the people. I like being useful. I sat next to her on the hood even though the cold came straight through my coat. I didn't build any of this to be impressive. I built it because in 1989 I was a 28-year-old single woman with a used car and a bad rental apartment, and I decided that was never going to be my permanent situation. She started crying. Not the polite kind. The kind that comes up from somewhere deep and takes you by surprise. The envelope fell on the floor, she said. He made that joke and I sat there. I know. I should have. You should have, I said simply. But you didn't. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. It's Marcus, she said, looking at the screen. Her face changed. He's asking where I am. She looked up at me with something in her expression I hadn't seen in years. A question she was actually asking me instead of her husband. What do I tell him? Tell him you'll be home when you're ready. She looked at the phone for a long moment, then typed something and put it in her pocket. He's going to want to know about the building. He's going to find out about more than the building, I said. There are some things you need to know. About Robert Gaines. The name landed blank on her face. She didn't know it. He's your husband's silent investor, I said. He put $200,000 into Forager 2 years ago in exchange for a 30% stake. Your husband has been filing reports showing the restaurant operating at a loss for 8 straight quarters. Mr. Gaines has been waiting for his return. There hasn't been one. My daughter blinked. What are you saying? I'm saying the restaurant is successful. You've seen the full tables. You've seen the press. You've seen the reviews. I looked at her steadily. The money exists. It's just not being reported to the man who put his life savings into this business on the promise of an honest partnership. The color left my daughter's face completely. Marcus wouldn't. I'm not asking you to decide what Marcus would or wouldn't do right now, I said. I'm asking you to sit with the facts. My attorney has documented everything. Robert Gaines has retained legal counsel. This is no longer a private matter. Her phone buzzed again. And again. 7 times in quick succession. She looked at the screen, and this time her expression shifted from sad to something harder. He knows I'm here. Someone must have. She looked at the building, then at me. There's a camera at the front entrance of the restaurant. Of course there was. He'd requested a security system upgrade last spring, billed to the property management company, which meant billed to me. I'd approved it without a thought. My attorney's name is Patricia Voss, I said. I want you to call her Monday morning. Before you talk to Marcus about any of this, before you let him explain anything, you call Patricia first and let her walk you through what's been documented. I put my hand over my daughter's. You are not in legal trouble. Your name isn't on any of the business filings. But I need you to understand what you're dealing with before he has a chance to shape how you see it. She nodded slowly. Her hand under mine was shaking. I should have told you about the buildings years ago, I said. I thought I was teaching you something by staying quiet. What I actually did was leave you without context, leave you vulnerable. That's on me. She looked at me. Mascara tracked down both cheeks. Why didn't you tell me? The real reason. I thought about that honestly. Because I cleaned offices until I was 40 and raised you alone in a 2-bedroom on Orchard Street, and somewhere in the middle of that I got ashamed of needing you to see me differently. I thought if you knew about the money, I'd never know if you loved me or the money. I paused. But hiding it had the same effect. You ended up seeing nothing. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Not a young person's gesture, an old one, something she'd done when she was 8 and sick with a fever. We sat on the hood of my 2009 Civic in a strip mall parking lot in December. The frost melted where our shoes touched the pavement. Come back here in 2 weeks, I told her. Saturday, noon. There's going to be a meeting. What kind of meeting? The kind that answers your questions, I said. Bring a notebook. She called Patricia on Monday. I knew because Patricia called me afterward. She's sharp, Patricia said. Asks good questions. She genuinely didn't know about Gaines. I didn't think she did. She asked if she should get her own attorney. What did you tell her? I told her that would be wise, and I gave her 2 names. She called both before end of day. Patricia paused. Dorothy. Robert Gaines's attorney filed a civil complaint yesterday. The wheels are in motion regardless now. I know, I said. I'm just trying to make sure my daughter isn't standing in the wrong place when they start turning. The 2 weeks moved slowly, the way weeks do when you're waiting for something inevitable. My daughter called me every other day. Short calls at first, logistics, questions about Patricia, questions about what to bring to the meeting, then longer ones. She started telling me things about the past year of the marriage, about the ways her husband had slowly reoriented her world until she could only see it from where he was standing. About the times she'd wanted to defend me and found reasons not to. I told myself you didn't need defending, she said one night. I told myself you were strong and it didn't bother you. A pause. I think I was really just telling myself it was okay not to try. It bothered me, I said. I want you to know that. Not so you feel guilty. Because I want us to be honest now. Okay, she said quietly. It bothered you. It did. I'm sorry, Mom. I hear you, I said. That was all. For now, that was enough. The second Saturday arrived gray and cold, same as the first. I got to Meridian Commons at 11:30. Patricia was already there, standing by the entrance to the East Wing with Robert Gaines, who turned out to be 68, soft-spoken, a retired high school principal who'd invested his retirement savings in my son-in-law's dream. He shook my hand with both of his. Mrs. Clearwater, he said. It was the name on the LLC documents. He didn't know my last name was Hendricks. Dorothy, I said. Call me Dorothy. At noon, my daughter pulled into the parking lot. She came alone the way I'd asked. She shook Robert Gaines's hand without knowing exactly who he was yet, and he held her hand for an extra moment and said, I don't blame you for any of this. I want you to know that. Her eyes filled. At 12:15, another car pulled in. A black Audi. My son-in-law got out looking like a man who'd been awake since 3 in the morning, which I suspected was true. His shirt was pressed, but his eyes were not. He took in Patricia's presence first, then Robert Gaines, then mine. "What is this?" His voice had gone very quiet. "This is a conversation," I said, "about the building you've been operating in and the investor you've been misleading." He looked at my daughter. "You set this up with her?" She didn't answer right away, and in that pause I watched her do something I'd been waiting 2 years to see. She straightened. Not dramatically, just the small physical shift of someone who'd decided something. "Robert Gaines is your investor," she said to her husband. "I know about the offshore transfers. I know about the loss reports." His jaw worked. "You don't understand how restaurant accounting—" "I have copies of your actual revenue statements," Patricia said evenly, "compared to the quarterly reports filed with Mr. Gaines. Would you like to walk through the discrepancy?" "This is insane. This is a family." "This stopped being a family matter when you filed fraudulent reports," Robert Gaines said. His voice was perfectly steady. "My granddaughter's college fund was in that investment." The quiet that followed was the kind that has weight. My son-in-law looked around the parking lot the way people do when they're calculating exits. Then he looked at me. "This is because of the check," he said. "This is about Thanksgiving." "No," I said. "This is about $200,000 you borrowed from a good man and lied to for 2 years. Thanksgiving just clarified my timeline." "You're her mother." The words came out sharp and small. "You're a cashier. You have no standing to—" "I own this building," I said. "Every unit your restaurant sits in, every table your customers eat at, every inch of parking lot you're standing on right now belongs to me. I have standing. I let that settle." "And your lease renewal?" Paused. "Effective immediately." He stared. "You can't, Patricia." He turned to my attorney. "This woman can't just—" "Miss Hendricks can do exactly that," Patricia said. "She owns the property. The lease expires February 28th. No renewal has been authorized." Robert Gaines's attorney stepped forward from where she'd been standing quietly near the entrance and placed a folder in my son-in-law's hands. "Civil suit for recovery of the invested funds plus damages," she said. "You've been served." He looked at my daughter, and for a moment I saw what she must have fallen in love with, that practiced expression of wounded sincerity. The face that said, "You're the only one who understands me." The face that had worked on her for years. "Amanda," he said softly. And then Patricia said, "Mr. Delacroix, there's one more matter." The Financial Crimes Division of the Massachusetts AG's office was notified on Friday. An investigation has been opened. Whatever he'd been about to say to my daughter, he didn't finish it. He looked at the folder in his hands. He looked at Robert Gaines. He looked at my attorney. And then he walked back to his car, got in, and drove out of my parking lot for what I suspected would be one of the last times. My daughter sat down on the concrete planter near the entrance. She didn't cry. She just pressed her fingers to her mouth and breathed. Robert Gaines sat down beside her. "I'm truly sorry this happened to you," he said. "None of this was your fault." "I feel like I should have known," she said. "People who are being deceived often feel that way afterward," he said gently. "It doesn't mean you were foolish. It means someone worked hard to deceive you." I stood nearby and watched my daughter receive kindness from a stranger she'd never met, a man who had more reason than most to be bitter, and I thought about the ways we find our way back to ourselves, not in one moment, not through a single revelation, but in the accumulation of smaller ones, sitting still while something hard lands, not deflecting, not reaching for someone else's reaction to borrow. She looked up at me eventually. "What happens now?" "Now you go home," I said. "You call the attorneys. You let the process work. And when you're ready, you come back here." "Come back, why?" I looked at the Meridian Commons East Wing, at the 5 connected units, at the building I'd owned for 19 years. "Because I have a building sitting empty in February," I said, "and a daughter who spent 2 years watching someone run a business. I think there's something worth talking about." She looked at the building for a long moment. "I don't know anything about running a commercial property." "Neither did I in 1991, I said. "I learned." 3 months passed. The legal process moved the way legal processes do, slowly, steadily, with a momentum that built whether or not anyone was watching. The civil suit settled in April. My son-in-law's attorney negotiated a repayment plan. The AG's investigation was ongoing. My daughter filed for divorce in March. Quietly. without drama, with the help of an attorney she'd chosen herself. She came to see me every weekend. Not always for practical reasons, sometimes just to sit in my kitchen and drink coffee. Sometimes to help me go over tenant communications or review a maintenance request. She had a sharp eye for detail that surprised me, though it shouldn't have. She'd always been sharp. She'd just been aiming it in the wrong direction. On an afternoon in May, we walked the units at Meridian Commons. The east wing had been professionally cleaned and stood empty, light coming through the front windows. Her boots echoed on the floor her husband had cooked on for 2 years. "The foundation is solid," she said, running a hand along the wall. "The kitchen infrastructure is all still here. You wouldn't have to gut it." "What are you thinking?" I asked. She turned around slowly. "Robert Gaines came to see me last week. He said he still believes in this space. He said if the right operator came along, he'd consider reinvesting." I tilted my head. "You've been talking to Robert Gaines. He came to my workplace. He apologized again, which he didn't have to do. And then he talked to me for an hour about what this restaurant could be if it was actually run honestly." She paused. "He said the community here needs this space. He said there are teachers, nurses, working families who drove 45 minutes to eat here because it was good, and they never got to know who owned it or whether it cared about them." I watched my daughter's face while she talked. It was a different face than the one I'd watched at Thanksgiving. Something was back in it, a quality I hadn't seen since she was young. Conviction. "What are you proposing?" I asked. "I'm not ready to propose anything yet," she said honestly. "I'd need to learn. A lot. I'd need someone to teach me how this works, the real version, not the version built on someone else's money and someone else's lies." She looked at me directly. "I'd need you." I was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car turned into the parking lot. A young woman, scrubs under her jacket, dropping something off at the dry cleaner next door. She glanced at the empty restaurant space as she passed, that quick, hopeful look people give dark storefronts. "Monday morning," I said. "Patricia's office. Bring a notebook." She exhaled. "I won't let you down." "I know," I said. "But I want to be clear, this isn't a gift. You'll earn every piece of it. Every decision, every mistake, every lesson. You'll do the work and you'll own what you build, not what I built, what you build." She nodded like someone who understood the difference. I drove home that evening on Route 9, past the Meridian Commons sign, still lit, marking the building that had been mine since before my daughter knew what a commercial lease was. In June, it would have new life, a new concept, a new operator who actually lived in this community and understood what it meant to serve the people in it. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a window that faced the parking lot of the building next door. I could have moved 20 times. I chose to stay because it kept me honest, kept me remembering where I came from and who I was building for. I unlocked the cabinet above the refrigerator where I kept the portfolio binder. 43 properties. Current valuation updated this quarter. I turned to the back page, to the section marked Amanda Trust Documentation. Everything I'd set aside for her, organized and waiting, not for when she needed it, for when she'd earned the understanding of what it represented. I didn't call her that night. She needed room to sit with the weight of the day. But I took out a notepad and wrote down 3 things I wanted to teach her first. Not about money, about people. About what makes a building more than a building, the fact that someone decided to build something in a specific place for a specific reason, and that reason was always the same. Someone believed that the people in this community deserved better than they were getting. My phone lit up on the counter. A text from my daughter. It said, "I looked up commercial lease structures tonight. I have questions." I smiled at the ceiling of my 1-bedroom apartment. I texted back, "Monday. Bring your questions." Then I set the phone down, turned off the kitchen light, and let the quiet settle. The same quiet I'd been building something in for 34 years. Steady and purposeful. The way real things always are. The check I'd written at Thanksgiving was still on my kitchen table. My daughter had found it on the floor that night and mailed it back to me with a post-it that said, "Not yet. I'm going to earn this first." I put it back in the envelope, kept it in the cabinet next to the binder. Some gifts have to wait until the person receiving them is ready to understand what they're holding. That's not cruelty. That's respect. And to you, Listening to this story, if anyone has ever looked past you, underestimated you, made their little jokes while standing on ground you built, I want you to hear this. Your value is not determined by who sees it. It never was. Keep building. Keep showing up. Let your work speak when the time is right. Because it will be right, eventually. It always is.